I have to say that I learn most from looking back at finished film projects and seeing what worked and what didn't work. So this week I'm sharing the things I've learned and the mistakes I've made from my film projects over the last few months. Hello, my name is Simon Cade and this is DSLRguide. So the whole point of this series is to document my story as a filmmaker, the things I've learned and the mistakes I've made, so that we can all learn from that and see that every single film someone makes is an absolutely vital stepping stone in their journey as a filmmaker. So in part one we looked at my first few films, including my first film ever. In part two it was more about improving my technical knowledge. I discovered lighting, which was a big deal, and I got my first ever paid film job. And of course, if you want to see any of those episodes, I'll put a link on the blog post. But this week we're picking up right where we left off in part two, which was in the summer of 2013, when I was realising that even the most expensive cameras and best audio equipment won't be able to make a badly lit and noisy environment look or sound great. I was realising that how I use equipment is more important than the kind of equipment that I was using. So the next film I made, I really wanted to have a story. I wanted to try and capture the mindset of someone who goes out running all the time, when there are probably loads of people who couldn't even imagine deciding to go out for a run just for the fun of it. So I made a mini documentary which was very simple, just based around one interview and some shots of my brother running. We hear him talk about how running is his way to kind of escape the flat line of a sedentary lifestyle, and there's something really special about going through a really tough race but getting through to the other side and feeling that kind of achievement. So looking back at this, I think it had some interesting things to say and some interesting themes, but it could have been a lot more plot based. So I think a storyteller would have kind of conveyed the same information but in a lot more interesting way, found an angle to present this information. So for example, a storyteller might have documented his biggest, toughest race yet, and being able to be there with him and see the kind of struggle and see that sense of achievement at the end would be a lot more active way to show it. Or maybe even better, you could have someone who's never run before be trained by him, and that way you'd be able to see the kind of progression, and you could have interviews over many months to see how their kind of perspective changes, maybe going from someone who always thought that running was pretty pointless and was just a really tough thing that you wouldn't want to put yourself through, to then seeing the kind of value of it and, converting into a fully fledged runner. So I think something like that would have been a bit more of an interesting way to present some of these same themes and some of the same information, but in a more active way than just someone talking about running in general, kind of mostly in the past tense. But I have to say that I'm still glad that I did that video, because, for instance, a year before, I probably would have just got some nice shots of my brother running and then added some music and been done with it. At least I did get that interview. So the next project I did took a good few months, and it was a music video for Alicia Catling. And again, the whole idea with this one was to really tell a story this time, because I felt that with the running one I was kind of starting to get there a little bit, but I still hadn't told a kind of simple beginning, middle and end. And I think that's one of the things that I achieved with this music video, was to actually tell a very simple, very simple story. Because honestly, in my first 5 years of filmmaking, all the other videos have kind of just been like montages of shots, or what seemed like a sequence from a longer film that then maybe had something more to it. But them on their own were kind of just like, for instance, the wedding video I did, the kind of storyline was just, here's some people at a wedding. The scooter edit I worked on could basically be condensed into, it's a film which shows some cool tricks on a scooter. There's no happiness, there's no sad, there's no tension, there's none of these kind of really interesting parts that make up a story. It was just a sequence of shots. So with the music video we came up with a simple story, and then my goal was to use the visual tools that filmmakers have access to, such as framing and composition, editing, and of course the most important one, just on-screen action. And I went a lot more in depth into my ideas behind the video and how we did it in a previous episode, which I'll link to on the blog post as well. Now, because of the song's slightly psychedelic nature, we decided to make the video a little bit surreal, which does mean that it's a little bit hard to kind of judge if the storytelling was on point, whether it was told in a kind of convincing way, because it's easy to just kind of hide behind this idea of, oh no, that was artistic choice. But the point still remains that if I'd done this video a few years ago, it would have been completely different, and I'm just happy that even if I didn't tell a very good story, or whether it was convincing or not, at least I did tell some form of a story, and that is definitely the first step. So at the moment there are a few things I'm working on, a documentary with the band Glue, and I'm also being the cinematographer on a short film called Imagine, although that one's a bit up in the air at the moment in terms of scheduling. But with this documentary I imagined that it would be pretty easy to find a story on the location. Filming backstage at a gig, I could just kind of film people's conversations that were already happening, talking about being nervous about the gig and how it went, but I actually found that it was really difficult to kind of capture that reality. I found that as soon as I turned the camera on, people tend to kind of clam up a little bit and we lose that kind of natural style. So I definitely think I've got a lot to learn in terms of helping people to feel comfortable around cameras and the way that you work as a documentary filmmaker to kind of stage some things for the film, but also capture reality and how you kind of handle all of those things. And the other thing I'm working on is being the cinematographer on a short film called Imagine. Now, as I said, it's very early days for this film and we're still trying to work out the scheduling to see if I can really do much of the filming at all, but I'm definitely finding it really useful to be able to sit with the director and work out from the script what sort of visual ideas we can use and what kind of shots in order to tell that story. So it's been a really good chance to kind of put into practice some of the things I've been learning recently, and I'm really finding that pre-production is such an important stage. I highly recommend that you guys spend as much time as possible with the script, because that is where you can really make these important creative decisions before the shoot. So that's pretty much it with that project for the moment. I'll keep you guys updated with it, of course, and hopefully we'll have lots of behind the scenes when I'm actually involved with that film. Now, of course, all along I've been making DSLR Guide episodes every week, and I've definitely been trying to take the show in a little bit of a new direction, focusing more on the kind of practical things, a bit like we did last week, where we actually look at specific things in films and then use examples and try and get actors in and stuff to do test shots. But obviously this means it takes a bit longer, but I definitely think it's a lot more worthwhile. So I've been trying to take it completely away from doing equipment reviews and more into the kind of theoretical side of filmmaking and the bigger ideas. Writing and shooting an episode every week has definitely taught me a lot about kind of trying to share my ideas in the most clear and concise way. And I have to say, to many people, this will probably be seen as my biggest achievement this channel. I've found more success in making these videos than I did when I played for my local football team or when I was the guitarist in a band at school. And I think Hank Green actually summed it up really well when he said that you get successes, but you don't get success. So I'll link to his video. It's a really good kind of perspective on this whole idea of success. When I started out with this channel, there were definitely times when I considered stopping making videos altogether. Now, this is where you might expect me to say that I pushed through and I kind of persevered, and now look at me where I have X amount of subscribers more than I did back then. But that's not really true. It was just a few weeks ago when I was probably feeling less motivated about making these videos than I ever have been before, and that's with all of your amazing comments that are extremely supportive and the fact that I'm now kind of doing this as a part-time job. And I don't mean to sound ungrateful. Of course, I'm extremely grateful for the fact that I live in a country where I can go towards a job that I've chosen, when there's tons of people in the world who are just doing whatever they can so they can send money back to their starving families. And the fact that the internet exists so that I can share these videos with you and have all that amazing support and have a kind of dialogue with people all over the world. So I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but I just think that in my short experience of success, it hasn't been a good motivator. When you hear a millionaire filmmaker say that, their top-selling films, they don't make them for the money, they make them for just the point of telling a good story, it's kind of easy to roll your eyes. But if I look back at my very short time as a filmmaker, what have been the best parts? What are the highlights? Is it when I got a slightly higher hourly rate on a job, or when I hit a certain milestone in terms of YouTube subscribers? I have to say those moments have been pretty underwhelming. But when you come up with an idea and you get excited about a project, those are the moments, those kind of inspiration, it's that creativity, I think, which is a lot more worthwhile and a lot more fulfilling in general. And I think I'm just seeing the tip of the iceberg with this storytelling stuff. I'm in this kind of transition stage where I'm thinking, so I can light a scene and I can record some audio, but surely there's more to filmmaking than that. It's like a baker who spends all of their time making sure their bread looks perfect, intricately woven dough cooked until golden brown, ready for a display. But then one day this baker decided to actually taste the bread, and they realised that it's actually very bland. So the baker changes the recipe a little bit, adds some spices and some fruit to the bread, and then suddenly they have access to hundreds of different flavours. It seems a waste of space to leave this bread on a display when it can provide energy and nutrients to all kinds of people. They can taste it rather than just seeing it. So with bread, everyone agrees that the taste is more important than the appearance, and it's the same with film. The equipment and the locations and the editing and all the different filmmaking tools are just that. And filmmakers can use these tools to make a film that goes beyond just looking nice, but can actually be an experience, can actually leave a lasting impression on someone. Filmmaking isn't just a test of someone's technical knowledge. It's a chance to express yourself and to say something about the world. A film can change the way a government is run. A film can remind someone the importance of family. A film can inspire people to make a positive difference in the world. So to me, that is what filmmaking is all about, and that's what I've been finding over the last few months, is that it's not about the equipment, it's not about even how you use that equipment, but it's what is the point in setting up all this equipment? What's the point in all of this filmmaking knowledge if you're not going to use it for something that has some kind of purpose? So those are my thoughts about storytelling. I think there's a lot more for me to learn and a lot more stuff to get excited about and get into. So do stay tuned. I'm sure in the next episode of this series we'll be talking even more about this. But that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.